What is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and we continue. We are back at it. We finished our front support. We now have to build the back support, which is kind of the diagonal, the angled frame of the robot. So we're going to get started with that. But of course, as always, before we get started, we got to give our special thanks to First and Argosy Foundation for making this all possible. All right. I've got all the stuff I think we need for this laid out on the table. We are going to need the rest of, I believe this is stick 1 of aluminum. If you're using an 8-foot piece, again, if you're not using an 8-foot piece, you got to kind of do your own measurements and fit your pieces however they go. I found out that mine were 6 feet when we started the last video, so mine are going to be a little bit different. But stick 1, we're going to do our 28-inch cuts for that. We need a piece of polycarb. This can be 3 millimeters, which is like 0.118 or something thick, or 113 thick, or you can get by with 1/8 of an inch if that's what you have. So that's 0.125 thick. It'll be a little heavier, but it's going to work just fine. And then we've got 2 more of those T-brackets that we're going to use, or if you have to make more of your own, we showed you how to do that in the last video. So if you need to go back and rewatch that to lay out and make 2 more, go ahead and do that, and then rejoin us here. All right, I think that's all the material we need. We got a bunch of tools again. It's basically all the tools we had out last time. We've got our riveter, either pneumatic or a hand riveter. We've got our rivets to go with it. I'm not going to do any bolts in this section. Again, if you have the technique down for bolting from the last video, you can just continue using that technique and use your bolts. But we're going to do the rest of our structure with rivets. I've got a file because we're going to be making some cuts so we can clean stuff up. Variety of clamps to help hold our stuff together. Tape measure to measure out. We're also going to have a few measurements that we can do more accurately with the calipers, so I've got those out as well. Pen to mark some stuff. We've got our big drill bit to deburr. We've got our smaller drill bit to drill the rivet holes, and the snap punch. The only big thing that's new this time is I've got this big layout square, or a drywall square. This is going to help when we're marking and tracing out the shape we need to do on the polycarb. If you don't have one of these, you can do everything you need to do with the little square, which is cheaper, and we can just use whatever bit of aluminum you have left over as our straight edge to draw and mark nice lines. All right, let me get rid of most of this stuff and we'll get started making some cuts. All right, we've got our aluminum 1x1 by 1/16 tube, square tube or box. Got the saw back out so we can make a couple more cuts. And this one needs to be 28 inches long. So we're going to go ahead and measure 28 inches out. Let me see if the end is, clean up one end just so we have a nice flat edge to measure off of. Okay, and 28 inches is going to take us all the way to here. All right, and we'll put the line on the outside again. So we're going to want to remove that line when we make the cut. And there we go. Got a nice clean line all the way across. All right, and we're going to be making 2 of these cuts. Again, this should be your stick number 1 if you're using 8-foot pieces. Okay, let's line it up. Make sure we take out the line, but no more. All right, that looks good. It up. One more check. Yeah, I think that's going to be all right. Here we go. Okay, file it down. We'll see how we did. I actually still see some of the line, so I might have missed on that one, and we might have to make a quick little adjustment here. But we're going to find out now. All right, let's measure it up. Yeah, we are just a hair longer than 28. I would say we are 28 and a 32nd. So one thing you can do, if you cut it just a little bit too long, I could file it. I could put it back in and try to just eat a tiny bit off the edge, which is a technique that works really well. But we do have a sanding disc in the back. So let me go over here And I'm just going to hit it against the disc for a second. And we should be able to take that extra 32nd of an inch off. Okay, let's see. I'm going to do a little bit and check it. You can also, I was trying to just remove the rest of the Sharpie line that was there. So we'll see if we got that in the right spot or not. And, okay, that is, we probably took off half the error. That is going to be close enough for me, though. That looks pretty darn close. So we'll call that good. That is one piece. Now we need to do a second 28-inch long piece. So let's get this one out. We need to clean up the edge. And clean off the shavings there. All right, let's mark it out. Again, we have the two choices here. We can measure 28 inches, or we can try to make it match the one we have. I usually like to try to match the one we have, but either way will work. So making sure they're nice and flat on the edge there, and then we'll go ahead and trace them across. And I would say with these, the most important thing is actually, does it matter? If they're slightly different lengths, it's going to work. If they're the same length, it's going to work. If they're both slightly long, it's going to work. If they're both slightly short, it's going to work. We actually have pretty good tolerance on this piece. So we're not going to worry too much about it. Let's get it lined up here, and we'll make our cut. So that line should disappear. That line should disappear. And the piece I'm keeping is the piece that is clamped in. OK. So I need to line up on this side to remove the line. That looks good. Tighten it up. Let's go. And you should know the drill by now. We got to file it, got to clean the edges off. And they feel very much the same length. And the new one is also just a hair past 28. So we're good. These are going to work. We want to label them. So these are our back supports, but they're also the diagonal pieces. So I guess I'll label mine diagonal. There are also part numbers in there, so another good way, like we don't have a lot of pieces that we're cutting and marking. I think we actually only have one more to do, and we're basically all the way through. So you can go into the manual, find the part number, and write the part number on. That helps out a lot if you have a lot of pieces, but since we only have a few different types, just writing something on that makes sure you remember what it is going to work out fine. Okay, let's get this saw cleaned up, and let's bring out our polycarb and cut that to size. All right, next step, we're going to cut our polycarbonate back sheet here. There is a drawing that you're going to need to grab, and we probably can show that to you too, for KB24008 launcher base plate. First thing we're looking at, though, is we want to get the overall dimensions of this piece of plastic. So across, it looks like it's 18.25 inches. So, and the long way, it's 26.5. So I think my piece is only 24 inches wide, which, yeah, it's 24 1/4. So I'm going to have to do 18 this way and 26 this way, so where it fits. Okay, so there are a couple different ways to do this. If you just have the tape measure, what you want to do is go out to your 18.25 and make a little mark. Do that somewhere else on the material. I have this cover, so if I line up on all these T's, I can be pretty accurate. And with those two dots, I could then take any piece of metal and line it up and draw that line along 18.25. Now, because I have this layout square, I get one extra little advantage, which is it is kind of like a giant T-square. So I think I can line up one end on the flat side here, and that should hopefully keep me square as I line up those dots. Okay, and I can see we're off a little bit here, so I'm going to want to double check. Maybe this edge is not straight. So let me come this way on it, where again I've got the, that T on the side. And let's see where we are for 18.5 on this edge. Yeah, that one looks good. And if I come over to this one, what are we looking at? 18, it's a little out. So this says 18.25 should be in a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and check again. Let's see how this lines up. It is possible that where I got this from, the cut was not straight on the edge. And that's what we were talking about earlier, is you can kind of trust the factory edge, but not really. Yeah, it looks like it's a little out of square here. So what I'm going to actually do is let me flip it around, and let's see if this edge is any better. So I'll go ahead and see, I got to go this way. There we go. All right, let's do another 18.25 mark here. And another one somewhere over here. And do those line up when I'm square on this end? It's a little closer, but roughly the same amount off. Or my square is off by that much. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back, now that we've tested everything, to the first set of marks that we made. And I'm going to not use the square part. I'm just going to line this up on the two marks. Like so. Where is that mark? There it is. So, and like so. Now with this piece, as it so happens, you probably do not want to cut this piece bigger. If this piece is bigger, that could cause some problems. We might have to remove some material later. So make sure you are at that 18.25 dimension or less. And we need to go all the way out. I didn't go quite far enough, did I? We need to go all the way out to 26. What did I say? 26.5. All right, so we got to keep going until we get to 26.5 here. Let's measure that separately really quickly, because I'm not starting on the end here. So that is lined up on the 1 on my ruler, so I have to go 1 inch farther. You know what? That might be confusing to watch, so let's just get the tape measure out. 26.5. Right along that line. 26. Stay hooked on. 0.5. So we're going to right here. All right, so now we can continue this line out to at least there. And we're going to rotate this. Let's do 2 marks at 26.5 here. Set that down so we can get our other direction. And we'll see if this direction is looking square for my square or not. 26.5, so right there, and 26.5. So we'll go right on the top of the writing here. So I know that my tape measure is straight. And the moment of truth. If I line this up on the marks, this side is very, very close. So I'm going to go ahead and trust the square this time and draw my line all the way down. Okay, so this is the outline of what we have to cut. There are lots of ways to cut this. So you can pick and choose based on the tools that you have. You can use a circular saw and run it along it, or a track saw if you have one of those. You could do this with a hand saw if you had to. You could do this on the bandsaw, but you would have to find some way to make that original cut so you could get it close enough to run through on the bandsaw. If you have a reciprocating saw, that will also work. The multi-tool that kind of vibrates back and forth, that will cut through this plastic pretty well. This is a little bit thick for shears. I think you can do it if you have a big pair of shears and really strong hands, but it is a long way to go and a lot of bend that you have to do, right, to be able to get all the way down that line. So as you use shears, like one end kind of bends up. So what we're going to do is the easiest method, the lowest tool requirement method, and that is we're going to use a razor blade. And if you score a line with the utility knife in the right spot and deep enough, you should be able to just snap the polycarb at the line. So let's spin this around. We'll line it up on the front here. I'm going to do the shorter cut first, and then we'll cut all the way across here, and then we'll do this one. And the way to do this is if you have extra metal, you need a piece of metal that is at least 24 inches long. So you can use potentially leftovers of the 1x1 that you bought. If you have, actually, even if it's a piece of wood, if you have a piece of wood that fits there, that's going to work. In this case, I have this already, so we'll try to use our ruler here to line it up. And our goal is this. I want to put this line on the edge of my table, and I want to put this ruler on top of that line exactly on the edge of the table. So we'll go ahead and try to line up these ends. I'm going to get, again, that getting the clamp started and then doing fine adjustments seems to be the way to go. So that is pretty much lined up on the table. Now I just have to, let's get this other side started here, and then we'll have to adjust the plastic as well. So that's good. The ruler looks good. The plastic has to go in a little bit. That looks good. That looks pretty good. All right, so let's clamp this down nice and tight. Hang on, let me get the other side too. Oh. Make sure, though, that your clamp is past the edge of the corner so that you can cut all the way. Okay. And then, essentially, all we're going to do is take your utility knife. I like to, theoretically, if you keep it flat against the edge, it works, but I find it tends to walk on me when I do that, so I actually have it on a small angle, tipped down a tiny bit. And I'm just going to bring it across. I'm going to push down a little bit, but not super hard for this first pass. And I'm just going to take that all the way across, just trying to stay against the ruler. And when you get to the end, you might not be able to go all the way. So at some point, we'll flip around and we'll get that. And then I'm going to do it again. But it should get easier each time to trace, because there's a groove that the blade is just going to stay in. So I'm going to push down a little bit more maybe this time, not an insane amount. And we're going to do this, I don't know, a couple more times. Just cutting our groove here a little bit deeper each time. And there will be some point where we try it, and either it works or it doesn't. All right, let me flip around to the other side. And we'll do the same thing from this side in. Just that little bit that we weren't getting before. Okay, I think we're ready to try. And what you need to do to try is basically, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to just lean down. I'm going to put my hands as close to the table as possible, and I'm just going to push down hard. And if it snaps, great. If it just bends and doesn't snap, it means I go back and I score it more with the razor blade. So let's give it a try. 3, 2, 1. Snapped. All right, and then I'll just use the razor blade to cut the backing so this piece comes free. And we got to do the same thing for the other side. And you can see I definitely have a little bit of a bump there. My line was not perfectly straight against the straight edge. And that should be okay. What I could do is I could file to bring it down or grind to bring it down. The 26 dimension is not as critical as the other dimension, the 18.25 inch dimension. So that is the one we're going to do now. So once again, let's get ourselves lined up here. That's on the edge, and that will be on the edge too. Okay, and now let's get the plastic lined up. It might be too tight. It's too much. Okay, that looks good on that side. Looks pretty good on that side too. All right. Get these nice and tight. And here we go with the razor blade again, or the utility knife. Try to get in a little bit flatter this time if I can. Okay, so that first pass, just trying to keep it nicely against the straight edge here. And now we should be riding that groove, so you shouldn't have to worry about alignment as much. A couple more times. We also have less to push on this time, so it's going to be a little bit harder to break it. So we might need to we'll do a couple extra passes. Also, if you're doing this with the utility knife, get a brand new fresh blade. It's going to make your life much easier. They get dull very quickly, so start with a brand new fresh blade. All right, and let's turn around and get the other edge here. Okay, I think we're ready to give it a try. Let's see what happens. 1, 2, 3. We're good. Let's cut the backing free here. This piece will be good for later. Let's unclamp this and let's see how we did. Okay, that edge is cleaner. That is pretty straight. So I did a better job the second time than the first time, but let's see what our dimensions look like. So lengthwise, 26, maybe just a hair over that 26.5. Measure back here. That's just under 26.5. So I did cut this one a little bit crooked, but like I said, this is going to go along the back floor, and if it goes up or if it goes down a little bit farther or a little bit less far, we have a decent amount of space on that side. This direction is going to end up being where we mount our diagonal beams, our diagonal 1x1 box. And so this side, we really want it to be pretty close to accurate, and that is, well, all right, I am a 1/16 of an inch off on that side, and I am a 1/16 of an inch off on that side. So, okay, so it's cut pretty straight, but a little bit on an angle. So I think that's close enough that it's going to work, but we are not done with this piece yet. First thing is, even the edges that we cut with the razor blade method and snap, sometimes the corners are sticking out a little bit and are a little bit sharp. So we're going to go ahead and basically work our way through this thing with either a file. If you need to take it down a little bit, use the file. So that corner was a little bit up where it was cut, so I'll file that a little bit. Now we talked about this raised section in the middle here. I'm gonna hopefully just ignore that. We'll see if that becomes a problem later. But we'll go ahead and file this corner down so it's nice and flat. And sometimes you might also want to hit the corners with a little bit of a round over so that there's no sharp edges. So they will check at the event. There will be inspectors that go out that check at the event. And if you have sharp edges, they're going to make you file them at the event. So you want to make sure that people can't get, scratched or cut by your robot. Also want to make sure that the field and game pieces can't get damaged by it. So, all right, that's looking pretty good. Now, I do want to get the whole edge. If you only have a file, you can work your way down the edge with the file. But this deburring tool is actually really, really great for this. So if you put the deburring tool against it, you can just kind of pull the deburring tool along, and you get these nice shavings cut off. And I can do the other side as well. Like that. And that's feeling pretty good now. Let's do this edge. Okay, that's too tall for me. Gonna have to hold it down here. Looks good. And then we'll do this edge as well. And then the last side that we cut. All right, looks good. Might have, oh, there we go, it's breaking off. All right, I think we're good. You can file yours as much or as little as you need to. And now, what's next? We have a cutout shape on here that we have to make. So somewhere around here, we're going to cut out a section. So let's go ahead and measure up where that is going to be. So it looks like the start of that cutout is 11 5/8 inch up from the bottom. So let's go ahead and measure 11 5/8. Oh wow, I was way off for where it was. All right, 11 5/8 is down here. So that's like one of our starting points. Let's get another 11 5/8 mark somewhere over here. Okay. And then the top of this section is going to be 20 7/8 to the top. So we're going to do the same thing. We'll stay lined up with that mark. And I guess I put a lot of marks in, so just so I don't get confused, I'm going to make sure I know which marks I'm talking about. All right, we're going to 20 7/8. 20 7/8 is right here. That one's pretty close. And 20 7/8 down here. And it's that mark. Okay. Then going in, it looks like it is 5 inches in. So we're going to go 5 inches in here. Okay, so we'll mark this up at aim for where those guys are. At about 5 inches. So we need to go to here. And then on this side, we need to go to about here. All right, so I think we can now go ahead and mark these off. Need this to hang off the edge of the table just a little bit. So we're going to mark these lines here up to that corner. That looks good. Let's do the other side. So dot to dot. Again, I'm relying more on the dots because I'm not 100% sure my edge is perfectly, in fact, we know because I measured it, my edge is not perfectly straight. So there we go. And then we need to connect this across. So, use whatever you've got as a straight edge. I think this will work. So from there to there. Okay. There was a little notch in the thing I was using as a straight edge, but we should be able to make that cut. Okay. So now we have to figure out how to cut this. I think I can make one of these cuts on the bandsaw, but I don't know if I can make the other cut on the bandsaw. The back is hard to do. If you have a big enough bandsaw, what you can do is you can cut in kind of on a diagonal, curving it a little bit, and get to that corner, and then cut this way, and then cut this way, and then cut this way, and eventually you can work your way down to a pretty flat line. I think I'm going to use the oscillating multi-tool with the saw blade to do that back edge. And then we could do these front cut-ins either with the bandsaw or a circular saw might be good, or we could do the whole thing with the oscillating blade. Now this cutout here is just to clear the motor and wheels. So that means it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you've cut enough out, everything is going to work. Now there is a point where you cut too much and we don't have room to drill some of the holes that we need to drill to attach it to stuff. So also on the drawing, there's a couple more things. It has a call out for a radius here. So this corner, instead of being straight like that, it actually is curved around like this. So we can do that if we want by drilling a hole that would pick up that corner for us. And in fact, drilling that hole makes it a little bit easier to cut the other sections out. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. And then on this drawing, you'll notice there are a lot of holes on the drawing. We're only going to drill 2 of those holes. So there's going to be a hole somewhere around here that we're going to drill, and there's going to be a hole across to the other side of the polycarbonate over here where we're going to drill. And that's because that's where our 2 box pieces are going to be going up and down, and we're going to use those holes to help align on the box when we drill and connect it. Okay, so if we want to do these radiuses, what we need to do is grab a drill, and it says that it's a 1/4 inch radius. So if it's a 1/4 inch radius, that means we need a 1/2 inch drill bit, so a pretty big drill bit. And if it's a 1/4 inch in from the corner, or 1/4 inch, the radius is a 1/4 inch, that means we're a 1/4 inch in from this wall and a 1/4 inch in from that wall. So if you have your calipers and you set them at 0.25 inches, and so we're going to be somewhere around here. I don't know exactly where we're going to be, but we'll kind of color this area in a lot. And we'll do the same thing on this corner, so we know we'll get to the right place. Okay. What we can actually do is line it up on the line, and you can kind of, show where that 1/4 inch is going to be. So I'm right on the line, and I can do a little scribe. And if you're just moving it a little bit, like that, you don't have to worry too much about not having a guide to ride along, because I'm not moving it very far. So I should be able to go this way and find a point. So I made a T, but I know where I need to drill. And I'll do the same thing on this side. So aim for what we think is the right spot here and get ourselves a mark going. And then the other way. Oh, I missed the first one by a lot. Okay. We'll have to redo the first one. It's way out here. All right. Okay, so we have a little mark there as well. And again, because this piece doesn't have to be super accurate, it's okay if we miss by a little bit. Everything is still going to work out. So I'm going to go ahead and snap punch and move it over a little bit because I missed. And we'll do the same thing over here. All right. And usually I don't like to start with the 1/2 inch drill bit. So let's go ahead and use either your number 7 or 3/16 drill bit that we've kind of been using as we've been building this. We'll drill that first, and then we'll switch over to the 1/2 inch drill bit to open it up. Okay. So to drill this, we are going to need to kind of clamp it on the table here. We use these quick clamps instead of the C clamps this time because they're faster. Okay, and I'm just gonna put it on the snap punch and drill through. And same thing on the other one. This one looks like I maybe didn't put it in the right spot, but again, it's gonna be fine. So we'll switch now up to the 1/2" drill bit. And just line it up in the hole that's there. And it's gonna grab, so expect it to kind of grab like that. Make sure you've got a good hold of the drill. And we'll try to do this one too. There we go. Part of what I think made that hole look bad was that crooked bit that I drew. So if we look now, we hit the line kind of on both sides. So we're very close. The hole is very close to the line on this side, very close to the line on this side, very close, very close. So we're basically where we want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and hit that with the deburring tool. Flip that over, do the other side with the deburring tool as well. All right, and now we've got to figure out how to make these last cuts. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do this circular saw for these cuts here. Again, if you have a big bandsaw, that's probably the best way to do it. Mine is not that big, so I'm not going to be able to do it that way. So I'm going to hang this just off the edge of the table so that I don't cut the table. Actually, I think I need to go this way because there's a wall here and I can't clamp. So we'll go like here, and we'll go ahead and clamp this down. We'll see if this clamp might be in the way, so we're going to see here in a second. Let me grab a circular saw. But I think we'll be okay. All right. So if you have another person, should definitely support this edge from bending down too far. I'll do my best to kind of hold on to that as we cut here. So line it up on the line. Remember, it's okay if it's a little bit bigger than it needs to be. Not a lot, but a little bit. And let's go for it. Okay. I cut that one a little bit too far, so we might actually lose our radius on that corner, but the radius was not required. Let's get this one going. So we need to be out about here. And the reason to do the radius, by the way, is sharp corners are stress risers, so it should technically be stronger if you have a curve in that corner instead of a straight line. For this piece, the way this piece is being used and where this piece is being supported, I don't think that's actually something we have to worry about. But just so you know, that's the idea. All right, let's go ahead and cut this other side. Let's see if I can get into the circle this time. I hit the clamp. Let's move it farther off. There we go. All right, that one went better. If you have a jigsaw, that's probably a good saw to use for this. If you have to do it with a hand saw, you can get some that are small that you can make that cut. I'm going to use the multi-tool for this. So let me trade my tools out here. And the way this one works is basically vibrates back and forth. And we have this piece here, which is a little blade. And we can put it at whatever angle we want. That seems like a good angle. And lock it in. So the idea is this will vibrate. And the saw blade going back and forth will cut. But because it's just a tiny thing, I can just plunge right in here and then make that cut across. Now, it's maybe not the straightest way to make a cut, but it should get the job done. So let's go ahead and get this piece clamped back up. And let's go for it. All right, so we basically have cut our opening out here. There's definitely some pointy bits, but let's see. If we check this way, so from 11 and 5/8 to 20 and 7/8 means our opening should be 9 and 2/8 or 9 1/4. So let's see if our opening is about 9 1/4. And it looks like, yes, looks like we're right on. So 9 and, okay, we're maybe an 1/8 too far, but I told you it's okay to be a little bit too long. So I'm 9 and, maybe 9 and 3/8. And I think that's going to be okay. So that means we can go ahead and spend the time now cleaning up these edges. Especially around here where I started this cut. It was a little rough. Okay, that seems pretty good. This corner is a little weird because the drill hole kind of blew out a little bit. So I can actually get a radius back by filing it with a round file. And that will solve the problem of it being rough as well. All right, that looks good. We might need to file this more when we take the coating off. But we do have one more step with this piece before we're ready to move on, and that is those other holes that we have to drill. And those holes are, let's take a look. So I always like to align my piece in the same direction that the drawing is. So for me, or I guess I'll do it upside down. So for you, right, we have the cutout here. This is the bottom. This is our corner that started out as 0, 0. So we measured everything down there from that corner. And that's where we're going to continue measuring from. So everything from one point. So we're going to measure up from that corner, and we need to go up to drill these holes. I circled them. So we're going to do these two holes, and we're going to do them with our number 7 or 3/16 drill bit. They will be rivet holes eventually, so we can measure up this way to about, where's my marker? So this hole is at 21.5, 21 and a half inches. So we're going to go up this way to 21 and a half inches. That's right around here. And we'll do the same thing on this side. We're going to measure out to 21 and a half inches. Right about there. Okay, then the other direction, we're going in by 1/2 inch. So for this one, we go in 1/2 inch. And that is where we're going to want to drill. So actually, on this one, I have my line for my 21.5 here. I'm just going to snap punch right at 1/2 inch on that line. Okay, so there's one. The other one then, we go all the way across to this line of holes. So that is going to be 17.75 inches across to that one. Okay. So we are 17 3/4. That's right about here. Okay, and if we did everything right, this should be 1/2 inch in from the outside here. Mine is a little over that, or a little under that. Just about a 1/16 inch under. Because again, we talked about it when I cut this, I was on a little bit of an angle, and once I got a tiny bit too short. But it's going to work. Okay, so this piece is now, well, we got to drill those holes. Then this piece will be ready. So let's switch the drill bit back from our giant 1/2 inch one to, this is your number, 3/16 for rivets, maybe number 7 for bolts. Again, if you're doing metric hardware, you got to make all of the adjustments in size for your size hardware. I'm going to do the 3/16 drill bit here. And let's go ahead and get this clamped on. I'll clamp it just off the edge of the table here. Yeah, it should be fine. Okay, we'll go ahead and drill this one hole. It's good. Let's readjust so we can drill the hole on the other side as well. Okay, last step, most fun step. You get to peel the cover off. I don't really know how to do this in a satisfying way, and it's catching on the edges a little bit, so we'll just go for it. All right, and you'll see too, once you peel the plastic off, if you see some places where, you know, like right here, I've still got some burrs and stuff, go ahead and go back with your file or your deburring tool, and you can just try to break those off a little bit. So that looks good. This edge I can feel a little bit, so I'll hit this edge. Well, that was a good one. I guess this edge too, huh? Maybe I missed those earlier. Okay. So that feels pretty good. Again, if you feel any sharp edges, take care of them. Those 2 holes we just drilled, I'm going to go ahead and deburr those as well, since we're here. Let's flip it over, get the other side. Yeah. All right. Let me get this inside bit a little bit here. It's a little rough. All right. That is cleaned up. I think this piece is ready to go. Let me get this area cleaned up, and then we'll start assembling. All right, we got most of the mess cleaned up. And our plastic piece, you're going to need 2 of these diagonal 1x1 tubes. We need the horizontal one that we cut in the previous step. So diagonal ones, never hurts to check. Should be 28 inches long, which looks good. Your horizontal one, that was 16.25 inches long, 16.25 inches long. Okay, and then we'll need 2 of these T-brackets or homemade versions. And the idea is basically this. This floor is going to be the bottom. We're going to take the diagonal pieces. They're going to end up somewhere around here. Actually, more like this. And the horizontal piece is going to go across the middle. And so on one side, the plastic is going to be used to hold everything together. On the other side, we're going to use our 2 T-brackets. But I think it's a lot lower. So that's our goal. We're going to attach it together like that. We're going to start, first of all, if you're bolting, you're going to have to drill through everything at once. So if you're bolting, you're going to have to clamp the back plastic and the T-bracket on at the same time. So we're going to need to basically take all 3 of these pieces and clamp them on. If you have a hard time getting everything lined up, you can use tape. You can tape this to hold it in place while you get everything else lined up and clamp down. So since we're going to use rivets, we don't need the plastic to be attached right now. Remember, if you are using bolts, you got to do both of them together. I mean, I guess technically you could still do it separately. It would be a little bit more difficult. But so I'm going to put the plastic down, and we're going to start figuring out where we need to align this. Now this is going to be, it's going to be 4 inches up from the bottom, and then the T-bracket attaches. So since it's 4 inches, basically anything less than 6 inches, I like to use the calipers because we can. Obviously, the accuracy is going to be fine if you use a tape measure, but you know, we've got it, why not use it? So I'm going to go to 4 inches on my calipers, and I'll lock them down. And I can eyeball where that line's going to be, and we'll go ahead and color in that area so we can scratch away the paint and see where the line is. Of course, if you're doing it with a tape measure, same thing, make your mark, and then bring your T-square over to draw the line. But in this case, we'll line it up on the edge here on the Sharpie mark and just drag it right through. And I got a nice clear line there for me all the way across. Probably shouldn't have moved that because we're going to have to do the other side too, but that's okay. Now this bracket, right, we have our line down here. This bracket is going to go above the line. Actually, it's got to be facing this way because I turned it. It'll be above the line. So we're going to come down until we hit the line, and that's where we're going to try to clamp it. And it's the same deal again. I'm going to try to just make sure everything is lined up on the sides. Actually, it's kind of nice if you put it down on the table like this, because the table sort of keeps the edges lined up with each other. Then I can just move this until it's just on the line. That looks good. Then I'm going to use my quick clamps here for this one. It's got to get just a little tighter. There we go. And there we go. All right, so this should be ready for us to drill, but I am going to feel it. I'm going to check. It feels pretty good on the bottom. If your table is uneven, and it feels like maybe my table is a little bit because I have a little bit of a bump there, what you can actually do is instead of lining this up on the wood table, which is maybe not great, or if you're just using random tables, if you have some extra pieces of metal, or in this case our other diagonal and horizontal bars, if you rest on those, now our bottom is the flat metal edge of that box, so that should be even more accurate. So since I felt a little bit of a lip, I'm going to go ahead and redo mine, but doing it on that metal instead of the wooden table. Especially since with these clamps, it's so easy to put it on and take it off. So I highly recommend these if you got a little bit extra in your budget. Okay, now that feels nice and flat. So we're liking that. All right, let's find a place to, I guess we'll clamp this down and then we'll drill. So we'll get ourselves in close here. Clamp that down, and I'm going to be using a 3/16 drill bit. Again, I think number 11 is good for rivets. You can keep any size around there. If you're using bolts, you want to use the slightly bigger one, and don't forget you would have the plastic attached underneath at the same time. And of course, if you're using metric hardware, you got to use your metric equivalent. All right, here we go. Okay, first one, let's rivet it. So we're back to this pattern again, the same way we did it with the previous brackets. See, that one's a little tight, which is why they recommend a slightly bigger than 3/16 drill bit, but works okay. Go. We can do one more. All right. Okay, and then I think we pop maybe this clamp off. We'll drill this side hole. And then rivet it. Wait, did I just put that? I just put that back in the pile. Okay. Take the other side clamp off. Let's do our last hole here. Okay. That is looking good. I can even see my 4-inch mark. It's very well lined up, so that is good for what we're trying to do here. And then I'm going to do the horizontal bar next. And the idea is if I have these two beams set up, it'll be easier for me to attach the plastic, to align and attach the plastic. So we'll go ahead and do this one next. Okay, so this one, just like before, we're going to try to get it so it's nice and flat on the bracket. And then if we did a good job attaching this bracket, it'll be square and we'll be ready to move on. If not, oh, that moved a lot on me. Hold on, there we go. If not, then we'll just have to adjust it and we'll check it with the square. That still feels pretty good. Let's grab that square. I think this time, because we don't have the bracket on the other side, I can check my square with the bigger one, which is a little easier to see. And it looks like I have a tiny, tiny gap on the bottom down here. So I'm gonna just bend this down just a hair, and then let's check again. Oh, now I have a, I'd say that's good. I was gonna say I think I have a tiny gap on the top now, but I think that's about as good as we're gonna get it. So that looks good. I'm gonna throw a second clamp on here if I can without covering the hole. Oh, that was a little loose. Let's tighten that just a hair. All right, that looks good. So now we should be able to go ahead and drill that hole. So I'll go ahead and clamp both sides kind of in here. I'll clamp this side down, and I'll grab one more and clamp this side down. And when I'm clamping both of the pieces here as well, that is also going to help keep everything clamped and not moving. So we can check one more time here. And I guess we could just leave the square here too. There's no reason not to. And that is looking pretty square. So we are ready to drill the one hole that I can get to in between my clamps here. And we'll go ahead and rivet that one. And then this clamp is going to have to come off, and we'll get the other one. But I can check that square again before we move on. Yeah, it still looks good. Let's do it. And one more rivet. All right, let's free it up. And again, we'll double check our square now that everything is unclamped. That's pretty good. Can't complain about that. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is start attaching the plastic onto this. And a lot of times we got those shavings now. I wanna make sure that I can have stuff sitting flat on the table. So I'm gonna wipe that off a little bit. Flip this over and get our thing. So remember, the side we started on is the side that we want the gap to be. So this is the way it's gonna sit in the robot. Actually, this is gonna be on the bottom here. So it's gonna end up looking like this on the robot, right? But it's gonna be easier for us to work on it if I flip it over. So sometimes I like to put it together the right way and then readjust it. This way I'm sure I'm not mixing anything up. You can see we have this pre-drilled hole up at the top. We drilled that earlier when we were making the plastic, so we're gonna use that to help align stuff. And our goal here is we're just gonna start clamping this on, and we wanna make sure, that we are not sticking out past the edge with the plastic. Because eventually, we're gonna have another bracket that goes on the side up here. And if this plastic is sticking way over like this, when I go to put another bracket here, like it won't fit. So I want to make sure that I'm nice and flush here, flush on the bottom edge, and actually the top edge is the most important because that's where that other bracket is going to go. And then on the bottom here, where this bar is, I'm going to try to make it as nice as possible, but remember, this is square. These two pieces of metal are more square than my cut in the plastic. So I'm going to line this edge up, and if this bottom edge goes a little bit off, a little bit lower in some areas and higher in other areas, that's going to be okay. All right, so we just kind of line it up around there. And I got looks like I took an extra chunk out here, and you can see, so that's not lining up perfectly. But I think this is the spot we want to be in. So again, you can use something to make sure you're against that edge and you're not past it, especially up here at the top. And since I care the most about the top, when everything looks good, well, since I'm over here, we're just going to clamp over here. And that has to be, well, I'll clamp on this spot first. Okay. Then I'll bring this around, and I'm going to check this edge and make sure this edge is lined up. And then we'll go ahead and put a clamp on there. I'm going to use just one of the C-clamps for this one. I'm trying to get it right on the corner so I can still drill that hole without moving the clamp. Okay, and it's right on the edge, so that looks good. Okay, and then really quickly, I guess we can throw even another clamp on closer to where we're going to be drilling down here. Let me throw one. Let me throw one on here, and let's go tighten this one on. I'm going to get this one right in the corner, just so that it'll help hold the plastic down when we drill. But before I do any drilling, I'm going to take this other diagonal piece now. I'm going to check it on the other side and make sure that, yeah, that looks like it's going to line up. Well, it'll be down here, but that looks like it's going to line up nicely. So on the bottom, my plastic is not sticking out. That means I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to align it so the top is not sticking out much at all either. Okay, so now where we're working, I guess I'll try to find a place where this can sit mostly flat, so somewhere over here. We're working in this corner, so we can clamp this down and maybe clamp it down. And the idea is if we had drilled through both walls, we would have had 2 holes here and 1, 2, 3 going this way, because the last 2 of the T-bracket would not be showing, right? So if you imagine this T-bracket were here. So we want to recreate these holes into the plastic. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're doing rivets, actually, you can probably just eyeball it and just go. If you want to be a little bit more accurate, we could do that. We can grab our calipers and scribe the lines in. But if you know you're never going to switch to bolts, it doesn't really matter. And if you are going to switch to bolts, you probably want to have drilled them in one go anyway. So, we'll kind of do a half eyeball, half measure here. First thing is, if I set this to 0.5, that's the distance in that we want to be. So we know all of our holes are going to be somewhere in the middle of our 2 pieces of plastic here. So we can go ahead and set 1/2 inch and scribe down. There's a 1/2 inch line. And this way, really I want to be on the metal, so we'll be on a little bit more of an angle than normal. Okay, there's a 1/2 inch line. And we'll eyeball the distances. So we know the first one is going to be about 1/2 inch up from the connection. So somewhere around there, and then we're going to go to 1.5. You can also kind of feel the rivet on the bottom, and then just try to snap punch where your finger is. But again, these don't have to end up in exactly the right spot with rivets. So the Nice part is if everything is perfectly aligned, it might be a little easier to replace this plastic if it's damaged. But the cool part about plastic is you can see through it, so I can see where the hole in the aluminum is and just line up and drill that way as well. So, we should be just fine doing it this way. All right, let's go ahead and drill. Let's do the corner hole first. And then rivet it. Okay, looks good. Actually, these ones too, and I forgot on the first hole, since we're drilling through that first layer, we do want to deburr them a little bit so everything sits nice and flat. The plastic will crush, so it's not as important to do it on the plastic. But might as well do it right. Okay, there we go. Quick little deburr. All right, going out the other way now. And this plastic, man, it makes it, deburr. This plastic makes it seem loud when I finish drilling the hole as it rattles like that. All right, last hole. And rivet it. All right, we can now unclamp, I think, everything. It is attached wherever it's going to be attached. And I guess we'll take this one off for now too. I can feel it too. It's not sticking out past that bar, which is good. That's what we wanted. Okay, next step, we have to do this corner. And now that we have our plastic kind of in place too, we're going to clamp everything up together. And there are a few different ways we could do this again. We could align this to this piece and then do our best to make sure they're sticking out the same amount on the bottom, right? We could slide this up and down afterwards. We can square up on this piece, and then whatever happens, happens. So I think what we want to do is we want this piece to sit nice and flat on the back of this piece. I think that's because that's the outside edge of stuff, so it feels like that's the way to do it. But honestly, you could probably attach it. You could probably clamp everything up together at once too, if you preferred. But let me set this down for a second. Let's get that bracket and diagonal piece connected together. And the table's getting kind of messy here. All right. It was 4 inches, right, up from the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do the calipers again. Set them to 4 inches. Okay, and just so we can see it a little better, we'll do our marking there. Okay, and 4 inches going across. There's our line. And remember, this has to be the opposite direction. If you're not sure, check what you already built. Right? If you're not sure, you can always check what you already built and know that, right, like we have this side, so we need this side. So this is the right side, the right face, and everything. So double check that before you start drilling, because we can't change it after you put a hole in it. I mean, we kind of can. We can get a new piece. We could rotate this and drill on another side. There are lots of ways to fix it. Okay, and if you remember, We had better luck putting this on top of a piece of metal than down on the table. So let me grab a scrap piece here. Okay, so we've got a scrap piece here that we can use. And I'm just going to set this down on it. That's going to give me, keeping them flat in that plane. I'm going to line it right up on my 14-inch line, or my 4-inch, not 14. And then let's go ahead and clamp that in place. Looks good. All right. This piece can go away. Should close the marker. Let's get ourselves clamped to the table so we can drill. Okay, and I'm going to double check that is feeling nice and even on the edge. Still looks like I'm on my 4-inch line, so let's go for it. Okay, we'll pop the clamp off, doing the next hole. And rivet. Pop the last clamp off. We'll do the last hole. And let's get a rivet that's not already been used. Those work better. Okay. All right, let's bring back our other piece here and get it completely attached together. Okay, so we can see what's going on. I'm going to actually take this just off, kind of mostly off the edge of the table, so I have room to clamp here and up here at the top. And we're watching for a few things. The first thing is we're going to make this square, right? So we're going to get our square. I think at this point I need my little square. Oh. There it is. So we're going to make sure this is square. We're going to try to align this perfectly on this beam. That's going to hopefully give us our heights the same. And then the last thing I'm going to check before I'm ready to do anything is up here at the top. I want to make sure that this plastic is not sticking way off the side, because if we have a lot of extra plastic on the side here, again, when we go to attach our bracket here, it won't fit against the metal. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to just start out by lining this up and pushing this all the way in so it's kind of touching, and that is where we're going to drop our first clamp. So that feels pretty good. Now we're going to do the square here to see if we can be square. That's looking pretty square. Yep, and the edge here looks just about perfect. So let's go ahead and get a clamp on this end so the plastic doesn't shift up here. That feels really good. And then, guess we want one more clamp somewhere around here. Okay, that all looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so let's do the one hole that we can get to on the top. We'll flip it over, do a bunch of the plastic holes, and then we'll come back and get the last hole on this side. It's gonna be easier if I clamp this to the table. Okay, here we go. All right, we'll do the flip over here. Okay, and down here in this corner, just like we did on this side, we get to basically eyeball where we want to put the stuff. And again, I want it to at least be in the middle. So I will go ahead and do that line. This clamp is a little in the way. We'll see how we want to deal with that when the time comes. All right, so I'm going to do 1/2 inch because that will put it in the middle of the piece of metal. And we'll go ahead and just give ourselves a scribe line through that. And then, now this one I'm sticking below a little bit, so that looks like so I could measure this distance that it's sticking out and then make that compensation. So I'm sticking out by 0.3. It's pretty far. No, I'm not zeroed. I'm sticking out by like 0.12. So I would go to 6.2, and that's where the line should be, which is pretty much right where I put it. So we are good. Okay. Then let's get the snap punch. Line ourselves up. So we'll do the first one in the corner here, where those lines would cross. And then I can kind of feel, again, I'm just going to kind of feel where the rivets are on the bottom and try my best to match it. And then the last one is covered by that clamp, so I can't do that. There's one right about here. And there's one right about here. Okay, so we'll drill and rivet what we can get to here. Let's try to do the corner first. And I guess we'll go this way next. There's no right answer. You can do it in whatever order you want. Oh yeah, and again, we're drilling through the plastic, so I should be deburring these holes. First one got me on both sides. Almost got me again. Okay, we got to take the clamp off so we can get to the last spot. And we got to snap punch that last spot. So where is it? There is the hole. So it's going to be right about there, somewhere around there. Okay. Let's flip it over. We've got one hole left on this side to do. So we'll do that. All right, we can unclamp it here. We can unclamp it here. Let's check out how it looks, and then we'll come back and we'll add our last few holes. So looks like it's going to fit perfectly on the sides. Let's see how our square is looking. It's pretty square. That is pretty square. Everything looks good. We are ready to proceed. Next place we're going to attach it are the holes on the top that are pre-drilled for us. So let me see. I guess I'll flip it around so I can reach them. And theoretically, like the holes are already there. I could just drill and it would probably be okay. But what happens is when you start drilling, a lot of times it'll push the bits, the swarf of the hole you're cutting in between the material. And so I don't want to have stuff gathered in between, this box and the plastic when I rivet it. I want it to be nice and flat. And one way to make sure that that stuff comes all the way out of the hole or drops all the way in is to be clamped. So before I do these corner holes, I am going to throw a clamp on each of them. Okay, and again, I'm double checking to make sure that we are nice and flat here and not really sticking out past the end with the plastic. And that looks good. If you are sticking out past the edge with the plastic, what you might want to do at this step before you go any farther, it's still easy to bend this up. So you might want to bend it up and file it now, because once it's attached, if you try to file the plastic, you're probably going to also hit the metal more than you would like, right? There's no good way to file this exactly without hitting the metal that's there. So this is a good chance where you can tip it up, you can do the filing if you need to, you can bring it to a grinder, you can deburr it a bunch, whatever you need to do to get that back down to level. But mine is looking pretty good, so I'm going to clamp this side too. In fact, mine is in a little bit from the edge, which is just fine. As long as you got enough meat to attach the hole, any extra bit that you have there is not going to hurt. All right, so we are clamped in place. Let's go ahead and drill and rivet these holes. And we're just going to trace the hole that's already there. Now, before you drill too, you should do a mental check of okay, is this hole in a reasonable spot? So the hole should be about ½ an inch down and in the center of the tube. If it's way off, if your hole is right on the edge of the tube and it looks like you're going to crash on the edge, you should stop. You should remeasure stuff and figure out, where something went wrong, what's not aligned right, or what dimension was wrong. If it's, a little bit off center, no big deal. If it's way down here, that's going to be another problem. But if it feels like it's close, then we're ready to go with the drill. Looks good. Let's rivet it. And we already cleaned these holes because we drilled them at the beginning of this video when we were prepping this plastic sheet. Let's do the next one. Looks good too. Let's get that riveted. All right, we can unclamp here and unclamp here. Okay, so now we're ready to attach it in the middle. So our issue here is, as you can kind of see, in the middle where it's connected, it's still pretty loose and can peel away. So we need to add one more set of rivets there. Now, just so we're all in agreement with what direction is what, this crossbar on the bottom is the bottom. So the bottom part has the crossbar and then the 4 inches sticking down. The top has the extra Lexan sticking up. All right, so what I'm going to do is, let's put this back down. We're going to measure from the top of this bar. So not the top of the plastic, but the top of the metal beam that's here. And we're going to measure down 12 inches. 12 inches. Okay, and this does not have to be accurate at all. So, if you're 12, it's going to work. Probably if you're 13, it's going to work. All right, so I'm going to just eyeball 12. Try to line it up in the middle of my beam here, in the middle of my 1x1 box, and just do a snap punch. That looks pretty good to me. Let's do the other side as well. So we're going to, once again, find ourselves where 12 is. 12 is right here. We'll go kind of to the middle. And let's snap punch it. All right. And for those, same problem as at the top. We could probably get by with drilling this without clamping it, but stuff is going to gather in the middle. So I am going to throw a clamp on nearby this. If you want to be super safe, you could do a clamp on either side, and that will make sure the plastic is held down and is not going to shift. And let material, kind of push it up and gather in between. All right, so let's drill this one. You'll also notice too, the bigger that the subsystem gets here, the easier it is for me to kind of drill without clamping it down. Still probably better if I had clamped it there so it didn't move at all, but it's big enough now that there's a lot to hold on to. All right, we'll drop a rivet in there. Okay, and then we can unclamp, and we're going to do the same thing around our mark on the other side. So here's our mark. One of those clamps, one of these clamps, and let's drill. Deburr, and then we're ready to rivet. Well, I put the stem back in there again. Well, we'll find that one later. All right, last thing to do, for our plastic anyway, is we're going to put one more rivet in the middle on the bottom for the same reason that it kind of bends up a little bit. So we're going to make sure this stays nice and flat. And again, the positioning doesn't really matter. In fact, like if you find you're having trouble with the plastic staying in place, you could go back and add an extra couple of rivets. I have not seen that problem, so I think you'll be good. But let's get one more in the middle on the back here. And we can do that in a number of different ways. I think we're 18 1/4 across. Right, because this middle piece was 16 1/4 plus 1 plus 1. But if you measure yours, it might be slightly different. Mine is just under that. But even if you ignore that and just put it right wherever the middle would have been, it's still fine because anywhere in this area, it's going to do its job. But half of 18 1/4 is 9 1/8. So I'm going to line up at 9 1/8, aim for the middle of my box here, and snap punch. All right, and then let's drill that hole. Actually, clamps again, same problem. It could lift up and put stuff in between. I want it to stay flat, so let's throw a clamp in here. And since this one's so fast, I'll put it on the other side too. Okay, and we'll drill it. Deburr, clean the hole. And then let's rivet this on. All right, our back wall is now attached. We are almost done. We are almost done with this subassembly. We have a few more holes to drill, but let me tidy up a little bit first, and then we'll come back and mark and drill those holes. All right, we cleaned up a little bit. We've got our completely attached floor and angle pieces for our back support here. And this is going to sit, it's going to sit this way in the robot. And this is where the notes or those rings, those donuts are going to sit and get launched from. But we need a top cover on top of this so that when we go to put the notes in or shoot them out, they don't like flop out this way. They actually travel the length of our, our tunnel here and get launched out the front. So we're going to have to drill some holes so that we can add our standoffs and add our front cover later. But we might as well drill the holes now while we've got this step and finish up this sub-assembly entirely. So we're going to measure from the top of the metal down. And because the plastic is a less clean edge, I don't really want to work off of the plastic here. If your thing is very square, you can probably get away with it. But I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to make my marks on the metal bits because those I know are pretty much square and I know the edges are nice and clean. So what we need to do here is we need to add, I guess we'll work on this side first. We're going to add 2 holes on this side, somewhere like that, and 1 hole here, and we'll get this last hole up here a little bit later. So 2 on the bottom, 1 on the top, but on this side where there's no cutout. So start on the side with no cutout, and I am going to set my calipers to 0.5. This hole we want to be as accurate and as straight as possible. It's going to make our life easier in the next step because we're going to have to drill something that's not matching. We're going to have to drill something separately, and then those pieces are going to have to fit together. So our holes are going to be from the top of this diagonal tube. Remember, the T brackets are on the bottom, so we're going to measure from the top. And we need to be from the top. The first hole is actually pretty close. The first hole is 2.5 inches down from the top. So if I kind of line this up, I'm going to draw a lot of stuff at 2.5 inches here. So somewhere around here is where our mark is going to end up. And we can do all of this with calipers. So we know right off the bat the 0.5 is in from this side. So I can scribe with 0.5 there. We get 1/2 of our line. And then I can change the calipers to 2.5, 2.5. And then I'll lock them down. Okay, and we'll come across this way. And where they cross, that's the spot that we are going to snap punch and then drill in a little bit. So with this snap punch, I'm going to spend extra time making sure it is really right on the point where those 2 lines cross. And that trick of being able to do it a little bit on an angle to move the hole over, this is the step you need to use that on. You've got to make sure that we are as close as possible to that mark. All right, next one. We're going to come down. It's going to be 18.5 inches down from the top. So we're going to go 18.5. And that is right here. Okay, so to me that looks like it's the middle of the line I drew, at least the middle of the start of the line. Okay, and then I'm going to switch this back to 0.5 on my calipers. Let's go back to 0.5 here. Close enough. And I'll scribe through that little mark I made. It's a little harder to see because I don't want to just color the whole area in. But then I'm going to get that snap punch right on. So the middle of that line is where it was good for me. So I'm going to try to be right on the middle of both lines. I'm going to walk that over a tiny bit. That looks good. Okay. So that's 2 of our holes. And then we have to do the same thing on this side. So we're going to do another 18.5 on the other side here. And we'll find a spot here, 18.5. So that one looks like it's about the middle of that line as well. And calipers, well, I should have left them at 0.5, but I undid it, so I'm going to put them back at 0.5. All right. And luckily that went through the little bit of a line I had there, so I can see I'm just right on the edge of that line. Now, before we call this hole good, one thing we do want to check is if you go across, I'm going to line up the number 1 on that hole. On this side, I have 18.25. That means I'm 17.25 from hole to hole, which is what we want to see. Because remember, this beam was 16.25 and plus 1/2 plus 1/2. So your 2 holes should be pretty close to 17.25 apart. You can have a little bit of an error there, but it should be pretty close. And that's where we're aiming to drill it. If it looks like it's off by a decent amount, you can actually move the hole if you need to. So if it's way, way off, I think this hole is going to be traced to this bar. So if these dimensions are way, way off, then the two on this side without the cutout, you can shift them out or in a tiny bit, up to probably up to 1/4 of an inch on the face in order to get it to line up a little better. Okay, then we're going to drill these holes with, this time it is not the 3/16 or number 7 or number 11, whichever size drill bit you've been using. Instead, we're going up to holes for 1/4 inch hardware. So you can get by using a 1/4 inch drill bit here. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you can get a little bit oversized. So the drill bit I have is actually 17/64. So this is a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch. That way our bolt will have a little play, and when we aren't perfectly aligned on our holes, we should still be able to get everything to go together. Now, if you have a 1/4 inch drill bit and that's what you drill and you can't get it to line up later, we can always go back later with a slightly bigger drill bit and then a slightly bigger drill bit if we have to until everything lines up. So we're going to do 17/64, and what's going to happen is through these holes, we're going to have bolts that stick up pretty far, and we're going to attach something pretty high up in the air. So you can imagine if we drill this on a pretty big angle, now all of a sudden those holes aren't going to line up anymore. So we need to drill these holes pretty straight as you can manage. So if all you have is the hand drill, take your time, do the steps we talked about earlier, drill through the first wall, then realign, drill through the second wall. But if you have a drill press, this is a great step to do on the drill press. So let's take our drill bit and our piece and head over there. All right, so here we are at the drill press, got the piece, but first, of course, we got to put our drill bit in. So 17/64 or thereabouts. And this one has a key. Okay. And really, I just want to stick this whole thing up on here and drill. Okay, that is, I have one problem, which is there are these rivets heads here. And I think to drill this hole, I'm going to be really close to those rivet heads. And same thing on the other side. These rivets on the top are going to hit. So I want this to be flat though, right? Because if I have it on an angle leaning off of the rivet heads, then there's no point in using the drill press. I'm not going to get a straight hole. So I think if I use a couple of extra pieces of 1x1 box, I can support it around that. But now, of course, the table's too tall. So let's lower our table here. Unlock it, and down we go. That seems like we can still drill far enough. So now if these are here, what does it look like? Okay, so there are rivets there and there, so I need to be like, in this case, here and here. How's that look? Yep, that looks like that will, oh, no, wait, hold on. They both have to be on the Lexan too. So actually, in this case, I think we're probably gonna need to put them both on this side, like this. And that should work for us. All right, now that I'm short on hands, we'll try to get this lined up here. So we gotta get this lined up in the middle of that hole. Looks like we are at least close right there. Okay, so let's start by trying to get some clamps on things. Let's see if we can get this to line up now. That looks like we're there. Okay, so I just need to keep everything down and flat. Let's go for it. All right, there's one. And we will deburr those holes in a second. Let's go for the second one here. Let's get this all the way up till it's almost on that rivet. That feels good. And we are close. So let's start clamping. Try to wiggle it until it's in exactly the right spot. I think that looks pretty good. Can we get another clamp somewhere? Maybe. That seems good. Okay, let's go for it. Two down, one more to go. All right, and the last one, hopefully this is the easy one because it's all the way on the other end here. Okay. This way. It'll go this way. Cool. All right. And we'll try to get some clamps on it again. Just a little bit. Too much. Okay, we're getting close. And it's kind of worth taking the extra time here, making sure we get everything really nicely lined up. It will save us time later if we can get these holes nice and pretty. Okay, that looks good. Make sure this one's tight. Where else can we clamp? Nowhere there. Guess we'll do another one here then. And then I will hold this end down and let's go for it. All right, I think we're good. Let's unclamp this, check it out. Yep, let's head back over and deburr it. All right, so we gotta deburr those holes. So grab your deburring tool. Let's get both sides here. Plastic side is easy. Actually, the metal side's pretty easy too. All right, well, wait, there we go. Now it feels good. All right, so we are done with our back support. This is the angled kind of floor that we're gonna launch our stuff off of, our notes off of. So one more sub-assembly in the bag. We'll be back to put this one together with the other one. the back support, the vertical pieces that we made in a previous video, and we'll do that in the next video. But of course, before we go, we have to say special thanks to First and Argosy Foundation for making this all possible.